explosion wasn't a depth charge or a mine, and it wasn't any part of any naval or military exercise. It's the beginning of a new kind of treasure hunt miles out here in the North Sea. And what they're looking for is nothing so conventional as Spanish doubloons or a treasure chest. It's something much more valuable in this day and age. They're looking for oil. This is oil prospecting with a difference. It isn't the way they do it in the Sahara, in Venezuela, or in Texas. Because here there's 150 foot of sea between us and the seabed, and the oil may lie anywhere in the rock strata 3 miles beneath that. Well, just how would you set about looking for something that might lie 3 miles underneath the ocean bed? Oil men use a technique developed during the last war and used aboard destroyers for hunting down submarines. The apparatus they used was called an ASDIC, and the principle of it was that they sent sound waves under the ocean, which bounced off the nearest metallic object, a submarine, and they listened aboard the ship for the echoes to come back. Today, looking for oil, instead of using the mild ping of an ASDIC, they use the boom of an explosion. And this records the presence not only of the ocean bed, but of the rock layers and rock formations miles beneath it as well.
The key to the operation is the streamer, a 1.5 miles of plastic hose towed behind the survey ship. Inside the streamer are instruments called geophones. These are the ears of the oil scientist. They help him build a picture in sound of the kind of earth formation there is under the sea bottom. The geophones convert the sound waves bounced off the seabed into electrical impulses. These impulses travel along the streamer and are recorded by instruments aboard the survey ship. The streamer contains 50 strands of wire, and if a fault develops, it often means as much as a day's surveying lost. After the fault is mended, the hollow streamer is topped up with paraffin. The liquid helps keep the cable floating 30 feet under the sea. That's the best level at which to pick up the sound from the explosion. The North Sea is notorious for its weather, especially in winter, but it has to be at its very worst actually to stop for surveys. Occasionally it even means a dash for port. A check on the cable's position is kept by means of a marker buoy. If the cable drifts to one side, it can affect the efficiency of the recording. A metal sinker also helps keep the line at the right level. Seismic surveys can be carried out much more quickly at sea than on land. There's no laborious positioning of the instruments, and no holes have to be drilled for the explosives. The speed of the operation helps balance the expense of running the ship. The Kyle Ann, a United States survey ship with an Anglo-American crew, has been crisscrossing the North Sea all summer. A converted landing craft, she's captained by Ed Norris from Miami.
How much of the North Sea have you covered so far this summer?
We've covered approximately 65 to 70,000 square miles.
Well, that's pretty well most of the North Sea, about 2/3 the way over to Scandinavia.
Yes, it's a good way up towards Norway, and about half the western half, I'd say, of the North Sea, yes.
Are you going to
primarily.
cover the rest of it?
Well, there are other boats out here also doing this type of work, and our company has 3 other boats also like this. So,
You seem to have a massive amount of equipment on board. Is it more equipment than the other boats have? Is this a...
yes, this ship has more equipment than any other vessel of its sort in operation. Our streamer is approximately 9,000 feet long.
That's your streamer, that's the cable.
The cable we put out in the water there. And we have 3 times as much recording instruments as the average ship has.
What advantage does this give you?
It's a new technique, and it's proving quite in demand right now. And we are the first one to try it right here, and we're the only one using it in the North Sea at the present. It's quite expensive to start up, and we've had to iron the kinks out of it this summer. But it proves advantageous in that they can get a much more thorough picture of the bottom, which we're trying to cover.
What are your worst problems?
Generally, worst problems are either shallow water, and in this particular area here, North Sea, it's the weather.
How much weather can a boat like this stand?
We've been out here in force 10.
That's a hurricane.
Well, yeah, it's pretty rough. Just last month up in Norway.
Yeah, but can you do your soundings in rough weather like that?
No, we can't. We can take our soundings in approximately about a force 6 or 7, perhaps.
That's a pretty strong wind.
Yes, and then the waves make noise, which our wire picks up and overrides what we're trying to get from the bottom.
I see, so it makes work impossible.
That's right.
But if the weather is fine, the Kyle Ann can survey up to 100 miles of seabed a day. The survey is virtually carried out automatically. It's by automation that the streamer is paid out at the same speed as the ship is traveling. This means the cable is lying still in the water when the charges go off. The explosions take place at 2-minute intervals. The explosives are dropped into the water from a second ship, but are let off by remote control aboard the Kyle Ann. The size of the charge is limited to 50 pounds to cut down the number of fish killed with each explosion. The ship's position at the time of each blast is plotted by means of the Decker navigation system. The instruments in the navigation room read the same as those on the bridge. The technician, Tony Johnson, checks the reading with the bridge and then logs each explosion.
Okie doke. First shot point 17650. Time? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
A record of the dial readings is also kept by an automatic camera. During each blast, the cable instruments pump back their information. This is recorded in 2 ways. One is by seismograph, which acts like an earthquake detector and draws the shock waves of the explosion on paper. A seismologist checks it to make sure the quality of the recording is good enough. If not, his job is to stop the operation. The man aboard the Kyle Ann most concerned with the squiggles is Alan Cook, the seismologist. Do you think there's oil under the North Sea?
Well, I think that there's probably quite a good possibility of oil. There's a lot of oil companies are prospecting. I think there's about 20 oil companies interested in the North Sea, and I'm sure that if they're willing to spend a lot of money on it, that there must be a good opportunity that there will be oil there.
Do you have any indication from the signs that you send back to land whether or not you struck oil?
No, the interpretation is a very precise subject. a lot of corrections have to be made, and the recordings we make on the boat, they have to be processed in the London office, and then probably an interpretation might take anything up to 6 months or even a year to do properly. So it's quite it's a subject in its own right.
You can't really get even a general indication from here on the boat then?
Not really, no. You can get some idea of which way structures are trending, but certainly not to the preciseness which is required for this sort of work.
How about this 8,000-foot line we trail behind the boat? Does that give much trouble?
Well, this stream, it's the longest streamer that's being used in the business now, and it is a problem, yes. I think it's worked satisfactorily, but we have problems, of course, in making sure that it's at the correct depth. You can imagine a plastic-covered hose, 1.5 miles long, keeping it horizontal at a definite depth under the sea presents a problem.
I understand you got tied up with an aeroplane the other day. What exactly happened?
We were going across the Dogger Bank, and a 4-6. We thought we had a clearance of about 20 feet from the
4-6 in a strong wind, you mean?
4-6 in a strong wind, yes. And we thought we had plenty of clearance between the cable and the bottom of the seabed, and the cable was caught up. We lost it, and you can imagine there's a lot of money involved in this cable, so we weren't too happy about this. We pulled it up the following day, and we had the tailplane of a Junkers on it, and the undercarriage.
What, from probably shot down during the World War II?
Yes, it would be. The chrome was remarkable, actually. Still as good as new.
The other recording method is by magnetic tape, which, just like an ordinary tape recorder, soaks up sound. On a good day, the survey ship records between 500 and 600 explosions, and a fresh tape is used for each recording.
You're still connected, Stern.
The used tapes aren't analyzed aboard ship, but are sent ashore to be studied. The man who supervises the installations of the instruments and who's responsible for their upkeep is the chief technician, Peter Brisbar. Can you give me a rough idea of the cost of this operation?
Oh, very difficult. The cable which you saw going up and down on a boat represents roughly 40,000 pounds. Instrumentation, the magnetic recorders you saw, roughly up in the figure of 60 to 75,000 pounds.
And what does the client pay for this service?
They pay on a mileage basis, usually, of how much is shot per day.
What's it work out at roughly?
Maybe 10, 15 pounds per mile.
Do you think there is oil in the North Sea?
Personally, I think yes. From an official point of view, all the indications are good. There's a lot of money being spent up here, so it's quite on the cards they'll find something.
Is it easy to get out of the sea? To a layman, it would seem extremely difficult.
A trifle easier than on land, if anything. Your main problem is, of course, getting the drilling rig to be able to stand up to the seas and the currents and the different periods of the year.
Have you any indications that you've struck oil yet?
Well, we've had one or two favorable indications where the situation is such that oil could be there.
Now, you're in charge of the crew. About how many crew do you have under you?
Roughly 20.
20 technical and...
roughly about, say, 12, 13 technical people, and the rest seamen and laymen.
Do you have trouble hiring a crew?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, the conditions are quite arduous under which people work. A lot of them won't stay. They get, say, one trip, and they find they have to work anything up to 12, 18 hours a day. So, of course, it doesn't go...
Doing what?
Well, as I said, on a good summer's day, if we work for 100 miles, we might have to work 18, 20 hours in that time.
And what do they do with their spare time?
There virtually isn't any. By the time you've worked 18 hours a day, you're just about ready for bed.
But before bed, time for a meal, and for an Anglo-American crew, a mixed menu. This meal consisted of British roast beef, corn on the cob, and an American-style pancake. But the survey of sea is only half the story, the reconnaissance before the battle. This is Holwood in Keston, Kent, one of the centres for deciphering the recordings made at sea. It was once the stately home of Lord Derby, or one of them, and it's also the place where William Pitt invented income tax. Today, it's the centre of the seismograph service. Here, the magnetic tape from the survey ship is fed into a playback machine. The lines on the tape can be made to build up a cutaway picture of the seabed bit by bit at a time. This is done by linking the playback machine to a television monitor set. What the scientist is looking for is a hump formation, which would indicate the possibility of there being oil or natural gas underneath. The two are to be found together in sandstone and limestone. But believing you've found the right rock formation is only half the story. From Dorset, Sandy Gall reports.
Well, once you think you've found oil under the sea, how do you get at it? This strange vessel is the answer. It's a drilling barge with enough drill on board to pierce 2,500 feet down into the sand and rock of the sea bottom to reach the oil. It's 2.5 miles out from Lulworth Cove on the Dorset coast, and it's the only one of its kind in British waters today. It stands on 4 giant legs, which it cranks down to the sea bottom, and it's the kind of barge they'll send out into the North Sea if they think there's any oil or gas there.
It was here, near Weymouth, that they hoped to establish Britain's first offshore oil field. The oil company concerned spent £75,000 drilling a 10-inch wide hole in the seabed. A similar operation in the deeper North Sea would cost about £250,000. Expectations were high, but in the end all that was struck was water that proved to be twice as salty as the sea itself. But the Lulworth attempt underlined the fact that whatever a survey might lead you to think lies below, only a drill can prove whether there's actually oil or natural gas there. This bid to strike oil or gas off the coast was made within Britain's territorial waters, within 3 miles, that is, of the coast. But can Britain stake a claim if there's a mineral discovery out in the North Sea? And if she did, could she make it stick? The legal question was gone into 5 years ago at a United Nations conference on the law of the sea. It was agreed that any mineral deposits found under the seabed would belong to the nation closest to the site. But 22 nations must ratify the convention before it becomes law. So far, 21 have signed. Britain's signature could be the 22nd if this new bill is passed by Parliament. It lays down the legal framework for exploiting any oil or natural gas in what would be Britain's sector, the shaded sector of the North Sea. If a foreign country found oil there, it would have to lease the rights and pay us royalties. Groningen, a name that started the present treasure hunt. For here in Holland, 3 years ago, natural gas was found, a huge deposit, the second biggest in the world. and the rocks that lie under the North Sea are just the same sort as lie under northern Holland. By Christmas, the people of Holland will be cooking with natural gas from the Groningen field. And in a few years' time, Groningen gas will be piped all over the continent.
Well, what are the prospects of finding oil under the North Sea? With me is Dr. Tom Gaskell, oceanographer and oil scientist. Dr. Gaskell, has the failure to find oil down at Weymouth meant that the prospects are now less good than they were before?
I don't think so at all. You see, they're in quite different parts of the country. They're different geological provinces, as you might say. We may find oil in the English Channel, but we could also find a different kind of structure which contains oil or gas in the North Sea.
So they're two completely separate geological provinces, as it were.
That is the point. I mean, like you find oil in various parts of the world, but they're usually different depositional basins of rock.
Do you think the big oil companies are now going to be daunted by having spent £75,000 to no avail?
Oh, no, I'm sure, because that is quite a small amount of money compared with what we've all spent last year doing geophysical prospecting in the North Sea. And one can never find oil by doing this prospecting alone. One can find useful-looking structures deep down under the ground, but to find whether they're full of oil, gas, or water, one has got to drill a hole.
If oil is found in the North Sea, is it going to change our entire oil importing pattern? Does it mean that we won't import oil, for example, from the Middle East?
Oh, no, no, no. You see, we import about 40 million tons of oil a year into this country, and if you find one oil field, and it's a big one, you're lucky if it's 1 million tons a year or so on. So it's going to be quite a small fraction of our total lot, but it'll be a very useful additive to the fuel supply of the country as it is.
In general, Dr. Gaskell, can you sum up what you think the prospects are for finding it?
Well, I think they're pretty good. I mean, we've got quite a lot of small oil fields in Britain, quite a lot of small oil fields in Germany and Holland, all round the North Sea. The geology of the North Sea is very similar to the geology either side. It only just happens to be covered by shallow water in our present day and age. A few millions of years ago, it was probably land. And so, if we've got oil all around, we can find it under the North Sea. And of course, there's another point you want to remember. It's very nice for this country, at long last, to get a large amount of oil drilling activity on its own doorstep, sort of thing, because it'll be good for the drilling equipment business in this country.
So in general, you're an optimist, are you?
I think I'm an optimist, yes.